Look who just got exposed, but not in the way they expected. Hello to the actors, the strategists, the ones who played dead while building empires in the shadows. Hello to the ones they thought were broken, defeated, destroyed. Hello to you, because something just clicked in their heads, something they never saw coming, something that's making them spiral right now as we speak. They finally realized you weren't losing. You were performing. You weren't falling apart. You were falling into character. You weren't crying for help. You were crying on cue. And the whole damn world bought the ticket, sat down, watched the show, and never once suspected they were the audience to the greatest deception ever performed. They thought you were the tragedy. They thought you were the cautionary tale. They thought you were the broken bird they could point to and say, "See what happens when you fly too close to the sun." But the curtain just dropped. The lights came on, and you're standing there taking a bow while they're still trying to figure out what just happened. See, they had you all figured out, didn't they? They had you labeled, categorized, filed away under failure, lost cause. Another one who couldn't handle it. They wrote your eulogy while you were still breathing, planned your funeral while you were still moving. And the beautiful thing, the absolutely masterful thing, is that you let them. You didn't correct them. You didn't defend yourself. You didn't post the receipts or scream the truth. You just nodded, smiled that broken little smile, and walked away like you'd accepted defeat, like you were crawling off to lick your wounds and disappear forever. But you weren't disappearing. You were rehearsing. You weren't healing. You were sharpening. You weren't recovering. You were loading the next round. And the entire time they were celebrating your downfall, you were in the shadows, perfecting the greatest comeback they never saw coming. They thought your silence was surrender. They thought your absence was shame. They thought your withdrawal was weakness. But it was strategy. It was calculated. It was the calm before the Category 5 storm. You knew something they didn't. You knew that the one who screams loudest isn't always the one who's winning. You knew that the one who defends desperately is the one who's actually guilty. You knew that true power doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself when the timing is perfect. So you played the part. You wore the costume of the defeated. You spoke the lines of the broken. You moved like someone who'd given up. And they ate it up. They devoured that narrative like it was their last meal. Because it fed their egos. It confirmed their superiority. It made them feel like they'd won. But here's what's happening right now. Right this second. As your name crosses their lips again, they're connecting dots they wish they could erase. They're seeing patterns they can't unsee. They're realizing that every move you made, every choice that seemed random, every moment that looked like chaos, it was all part of the script. You weren't improvising, you were executing. You weren't reacting, you were directing. You weren't surviving. You were setting the stage for the final act that would rewrite their entire understanding of what happened. They thought they were watching you drown, but you were teaching yourself to breathe underwater. They thought they were watching you break, but you were learning to bend without snapping. They thought they were watching your end, but they were watching your origin story. Now they're scrolling back through the timeline, rewatching every scene with new eyes, and suddenly everything looks different. That post that seemed desperate, it was bait. That moment you seemed weak, it was a test. That time you seemed lost. You were exactly where you needed to be. They thought they were spectators, but they were participants in your experiment. They thought they were judges, but they were subjects in your study. They thought they were winners, but they were extras in your movie. And you were the writer, director, and star of a performance so convincing that even method actors would bow down. You made them believe they destroyed you while you were actually detonating their entire reality from the inside out. Listen closely, because this is where it gets truly twisted. The greatest trick you pulled wasn't making them think you lost. It was making them celebrate your loss so loudly that they couldn't hear you winning. Every laugh they had at your expense, every joke they made about your downfall, every celebration they threw, it was all fuel. It was all recorded. It was all ammunition you were storing for a day they never thought would come. You let them have their moment. You let them feel superior. You let them build their throne on the story of your defeat. But what they didn't realize is that you were the one who built that throne. You chose the materials. You designed the structure. You knew exactly how much weight it could hold before it collapsed. And now they're sitting on it, feeling proud, feeling validated, and they're starting to feel it shake. They're starting to hear the cracks. They're starting to realize that the foundation they built their entire narrative on is crumbling because it was never real to begin with. You gave them a fiction to believe in. You gave them a story to tell themselves. You gave them a version of reality where they were the heroes and you were the fallen. But fiction only works as long as everyone agrees to believe it. The moment one person questions it, the moment one crack appears, the entire illusion shatters. And right now, right this very moment, the illusion is shattering so loudly they can't think straight. They're asking themselves questions they're terrified to answer. What if we got it wrong? What if they were never actually down? What if this was all part of something bigger? What if we're not the winners we thought we were? What if we're the fools in someone else's story? And that right there, that's the moment you've been building toward. That's the moment when the performance ends and reality begins. You didn't just survive their attempts to destroy you. You documented them. You didn't just outlast their celebration. You recorded it. You didn't just prove them wrong. You made them prove themselves wrong by their own actions, by their own words, by their own arrogance, captured in digital permanence. The beautiful cruelty of your strategy is that you never had to announce your victory. You just had to exist long enough for them to see it. You never had to defend your choices. You just had to let time reveal their brilliance. You never had to argue your case. You just had to let the results speak in a language so clear, even the deaf could hear it. You played dead and let them dance on your grave, but graves are just holes in the ground until someone fills them, and you filled yours with everything they thought you'd lost, with every skill they thought you'd never have, with every connection they thought you'd never make, with every success they thought you'd never achieve. Now they're watching you rise from that grave covered in the dirt they threw on you, wearing it like war paint, smiling like someone who knows the punchline to a joke that hasn't been told yet. And they're terrified because they finally understand. You weren't their victim. You were their teacher. You weren't their casualty. You were their lesson. You weren't their tragedy. You were their wake-up call, wrapped in a performance so convincing they gave you every award without realizing they were funding their own downfall. They clapped when you pretended to fall. They cheered when you acted broken. They celebrated when you performed defeat. And now they have to watch the credits roll and see their names listed under "Fooled by." See, the thing about great performances is that they require great actors, but they also require a great audience, an audience willing to believe, an audience desperate to see what they want to see, an audience so invested in the narrative that they ignore the plot holes. And you genius tactician, you gave them exactly what they wanted to see. You showed them a broken person so convincingly that they never looked for the strings. You played the part of the defeated so masterfully that they never questioned if it was real. You embodied failure so completely that they never imagined it was a costume you could take off whenever you wanted. And the most twisted part, the part that will haunt them in the quiet moments when they're alone with their thoughts, is that you enjoyed it. You enjoyed watching them celebrate. You enjoyed seeing them feel superior. You enjoyed the performance as much as they enjoyed watching it, because you knew something they didn't. You knew that every moment of their joy was borrowed time. You knew that every laugh at your expense was a debt they were accumulating. You knew that every celebration was another piece of evidence in the trial they didn't know was coming, where they would be defendants and you would be the prosecutor with a case so airtight they couldn't plead, couldn't bargain, couldn't escape. They're realizing it now in waves, each wave hitting harder than the last. First the confusion. Wait, that doesn't make sense. Then the doubt. Did we miss something? Then the fear. What else did we miss? Then the horror. Were we wrong about everything? Then the acceptance, the bitter, soul-crushing acceptance that they weren't just wrong, they were manipulated. They weren't just fooled, they were complicit. They weren't just spectators. They were participants in their own humiliation. You turned them into extras in your revenge story and made them pay for the privilege of being there. Right now, they're having conversations in private, conversations they'll never admit to publicly, conversations where they're piecing together the timeline, connecting the moments, seeing the pattern emerge like a constellation they never noticed before. Remember when they said that thing. Remember when they made that move. Remember when they went quiet. Remember when we thought we'd won. And with each memory, each recollection, each piece of the puzzle, the picture becomes clearer and more devastating. The picture of someone who played them like instruments, who orchestrated their celebration like a symphony, who directed their mockery like a theater production. You know what's truly beautiful about this moment? About right now? About them finally realizing what happened? It's that you don't have to say a single word. You don't have to gloat. You don't have to explain. You don't have to defend. You don't have to announce. Because the truth is announcing itself. The results are speaking volumes. The reality is undeniable, and your silence. That same silence they thought was shame. It's now the loudest sound in the room. It's the silence of someone who doesn't need to prove anything because everything is already proven. The silence of someone who doesn't need validation because the outcome is the validation. The silence of someone who knows that the greatest power move is letting your enemies realize their own stupidity without your help. They wanted you to be small so they could feel big. They wanted you to stay down so they could stay up. They wanted you to fail so they could succeed. But what they never understood is that you were never playing their game. You were playing your own, with your own rules, your own scoring system, your own definition of winning. While they were celebrating checkmate, you were playing four-dimensional chess. While they were running victory laps, You were building rockets, while they were planting flags on hills. You were claiming entire continents they didn't know existed. The performance you gave wasn't just convincing. It was necessary. It was strategic. It was the only way to make them reveal who they really were, to make them show their true faces, to make them expose their real intentions. Because people show you who they are when they think you're powerless, when they think you're defeated, when they think you can't hurt them back. You created that illusion not because you were actually powerless, but because you wanted to see what they do with power. You wanted to document their cruelty. You wanted to record their celebration. You wanted evidence of who they become when they think no one's keeping score. And now you have it. Now you have every receipt, every screenshot, every message, every laugh, every mockery, every celebration of your supposed downfall, all time-stamped, all documented, all preserved, not for revenge but for protection, not for attack but for armor, not for warfare but for wisdom. You learned exactly who would celebrate your pain, exactly who would dance on your grave, exactly who would smile in your face while hoping for your failure. And that information, that knowledge, that clarity, it's worth more than any victory they could comprehend. They're starting to see what you built in the shadows. They're starting to realize what you accomplished in silence. They're starting to understand what you created while they were busy celebrating your destruction. And it's magnificent. It's overwhelming. It's undeniable. And it's making them question everything they thought they knew. If they could do this while we thought they were broken, what else are they capable of? If they could build this while we thought they were destroyed, what else are they building right now? If this was them at their lowest, what the hell are they at their highest? These questions, these terrifying questions, they're keeping them up at night, stealing their sleep, haunting their quiet moments. See, you didn't just make them think they won. You made them invest in that belief. You made them stake their reputation on it. You made them tell everyone who would listen about your failure, about your downfall, about your defeat. And now they have to either admit they were wrong or double down on a lie that's becoming more obvious by the day. They're trapped in a narrative of their own making. A story they told so many times they started believing it themselves. But stories need endings. And this story's ending isn't what they wrote. This story's ending has you standing, thriving, glowing, while they're scrambling to explain how the corpse they buried came back to life stronger than before. The Academy Award you deserve isn't for Best Actor. It's for Best Psychological Warfare Operation disguised as a breakdown. It's for Best Strategic Retreat that looked like surrender. It's for Best Performance of Weakness that was actually strength gathering itself. It's for Best Illusion that made people believe exactly what you needed them to believe, for exactly as long as you needed them to believe it. You didn't just act. You transformed. You didn't just pretend. You became. You didn't just play a role. You inhabited it so completely that even you started to wonder where the character ended and the real you began. But here's the secret they're just now discovering. The character never ended because there was no character. The role never stopped because there was no role. The performance never concluded because there was no performance. It was always you, just you, operating at a level of strategic thinking they couldn't comprehend. Just you making moves they couldn't track. Just you playing a game they didn't know existed. What looked like acting was actually being. What seemed like pretending was actually doing. What appeared as performance was actually execution of a plan. so sophisticated it looked like chaos to everyone watching. They thought your tears were weakness. They were strategy. They thought your silence was defeat. It was observation. They thought your withdrawal was surrender. It was reconnaissance. They thought your breakdown was the end. It was the intermission. They thought your failure was permanent. It was temporary staging. Every single thing they interpreted as your downfall was actually set up for your uprising. Every moment they saw as your end was actually the beginning of their reckoning. You weren't falling apart. You were falling into formation, getting into position, preparing for launch. Now they're experiencing something they've never felt before. The sickening realization that they were wrong. Not just wrong, but spectacularly, publicly, permanently wrong. Not just mistaken, but deceived. Not just fooled, but made to look foolish by their own celebration of something that never happened. They're living in the aftermath of their own arrogance, sleeping in beds they made from assumptions, wearing clothes woven from premature celebrations, and the fabric is disintegrating in real time, thread by thread, lie by lie, assumption by assumption. You gave them the greatest gift they never wanted. You gave them front row seats to their own humiliation. You gave them starring roles in their own downfall. You gave them credit in a production they'll wish they never joined. Because now, when people tell your story, and they will tell your story, those people will be listed not as your enemies, but as your audience. Not as your destroyers, but as your believers. Not as the ones who brought you down, but as the ones who bought the ticket to a show where they were the punchline and never knew it until the final scene. The curtain has dropped, the lights are on, the theater is emptying, and you're there taking bow after bow after bow while they're still in their seats trying to figure out what they just watched, trying to understand how they missed it, trying to comprehend how someone they thought was finished is standing there complete. You're not explaining. You're not defending. You're not even acknowledging their confusion. You're just existing in your truth, living in your reality, breathing in your victory. And that simple existence, it's louder than any speech, more powerful than any explanation, more devastating than any revenge. They wanted to write your ending. They wanted to author your conclusion. They wanted to finalize your chapter. But they forgot one crucial detail. You're the one holding the pen. You're the one writing the story. You're the one deciding what comes next. And what comes next. What's coming right now. It's the plot twist they never saw coming. The revelation that rewrites everything. The moment when the audience realizes the person they thought was the victim was actually the mastermind. The moment when the fool becomes the genius. When the defeated becomes the victor. When the performance ends and reality begins. Oh, this is rich. This is poetic. You see, they thought they had you. Thought they had you cornered, crushed, beaten into the dirt like some worthless insect. They smirked while they did it. Oh, they laughed, all right. Called you finished, weak, insignificant. But the joke's on them, because they didn't bury you. No, they planted you. And now you're something else, something darker, something unstoppable. You ever watch a man realize he made the worst mistake of his life? The way his face twitches, his eyes dart around, searching for an escape. It's beautiful. It's poetic. And oh, it's happening right now, right in front of your eyes. Because those same people, the ones who threw dirt on your name, who whispered behind your back, who smiled while they cut you open, they're the ones running now, scrambling, desperate, begging. Why? Because karma doesn't knock, it kicks the damn door down. And the best part? You don't have to lift a single finger. You don't have to chase them. You don't have to plot revenge. You just watch. Because the game is over, and they lost. They just don't know it yet. Oh, they thought they were clever, didn't they? Thought they were puppet masters, pulling strings, setting traps, laughing behind closed doors, backstabbers, doubters, betrayers, the ones who smiled in your face while sharpening the knife behind their backs, the ones who whispered, who plotted, who played dirty, all so they could break you. They thought they had control, that they could decide your fate, that they could write the ending of your story before you ever got the chance. And you? Oh, they saw you as a joke, a pawn, a fool, blindly walking into their little web of deception. But here's where they got it wrong. They didn't realize you were always 3 steps ahead. They were playing checkers while you were orchestrating a war. They were celebrating their victory before the game even started. Oh, they underestimated you. Thought you were weak. Thought you were just some lost soul fumbling in the dark. But what they didn't see, what they were too blind, too arrogant to understand, was that you thrive in the darkness. You become the storm they never saw coming. See, there's a fatal flaw in people like them. They think they're invincible. They think they can manipulate, destroy, twist the world in their favor without consequence. But power? Power isn't stolen, it's earned. It's forged in fire, sharpened through pain, hardened through war. And that's why they lost. That's why they're scrambling now, grasping at shadows, trying to outrun the very consequences they swore would never come. They started a war, but they forgot one thing. You don't start a war with someone who has nothing left to lose. You don't play games with someone who studied the rules just to break them. You don't try to bury someone who became the dirt itself. So now here they are, cornered, helpless, desperate. They set the battlefield on fire and now they're choking on the smoke. They swung first, but you ended it. And the funniest part? You never even had to get your hands dirty. They lost the moment they thought they won. Something shifted, didn't it? One day, you just vanished. No warnings, no explanations. You stopped arguing, stopped explaining yourself, stopped giving them access to your mind, your energy, your soul. You went silent. And that's when the fear crept in. Because weak people, cowards, leeches, they love noise. They love the chaos, the conflict, the back and forth. They need to know they still have power over you, that they can still control your emotions. So when you walked away, when you stopped feeding their egos, stopped giving them reactions to play with, that's when they started sweating. See, they laughed when you were down. Oh, they celebrated your failures, gossiped, mocked, stood in circles, smirking, toasting to your downfall like you were some kind of dead man walking. But they never expected this. They never expected you to rise in silence. Now they check their mirrors, their messages, their surroundings, waiting, wondering, where did you go? What are you planning? Why does your silence feel louder than a scream? And that's the beauty of it. You don't have to chase them. You don't have to prove anything. You just keep moving, keep growing, keep becoming something they can't understand, can't predict, can't control. You are the phantom in their nightmares now. the shadow in the back of their minds, the silent force they can't shake. And the more you rise, the more they panic. Because they know, deep down, they built this. They created this version of you. And now, they have to live with it. The monster they tried to destroy is the one they can't escape. You didn't flinch, didn't scream, didn't beg. No. You just watched. See, most people, they react. They let their emotions drive them. Rage, desperation, that burning need for revenge. But you, oh, you're different. You let the fire simmer, let it refine you. While they were throwing cheap shots, playing their petty little games, you were calculating. Because fools fight in the moment, but kings play the long game. You let them believe they were winning. You let them dig their own graves, one betrayal, one lie, one mistake at a time. And while they were busy celebrating your downfall, you were building your empire in silence. Brick by brick, strategy by strategy. You turned every insult into fuel, every setback into a lesson, every betrayal into a stepping stone. And now they scramble. They see you stronger, sharper, untouchable, and they don't understand. How? How did the one they mocked become something greater than they could ever be? How did the one they swore was finished become the one writing the final chapter? Simple. Because you never fought on their level. You never played by their rules. You let them waste their energy trying to break you while you mastered the art of patience. You let them set fire to their own foundations. And when the smoke cleared, you were the only one left standing. And that's why they're terrified now. Because they can't fight what they can't reach. They can't destroy what outgrew their power. They thought they were playing chess, but you were playing something far more dangerous, and they never even realized until it was too late. You know what happens when a predator suddenly becomes the prey? When the ones who laughed, mocked, and tore someone down realize, too late, that the game has flipped. It starts small, a little unease, a nagging thought in the back of their minds. They see you winning, thriving, unbothered. At first they ignore it, convince themselves it's just a fluke, that you'll fall again, that you're still the same person they crushed beneath their heel. But then, it keeps happening. Day by day, they watch you grow, elevate. You're not just doing better, you're untouchable now. And that's when the fear creeps in. Because now, every shadow looks a little darker. Every silence feels heavier. Every small inconvenience, every slip-up, every loss, it gnaws at them. It whispers in their ears, karma is coming. Oh, paranoia is a funny thing, isn't it? At first they laughed at the idea of consequences, thought they were above it all. But now they look over their shoulders, wondering, watching, questioning. Is it coming today? Tomorrow? Will it be slow and painful, or fast and merciless? See, when they threw dirt on your name, they never expected the weight of it to drag them down instead. They thought they had control, that they could write the script of your downfall. But here's the thing about karma. It doesn't need you to lift a single finger. It just waits, watches, smiles, because what goes around always finds its way back. And now they're prisoners of their own guilt, their own fear, their own pathetic little minds. Every success you achieve is a reminder of their failure. Every move you make is a silent warning that their time is running out. They thought you were done, but the joke's on them, because you were never the one who had to run. They were. And now? They're running straight into their own destruction. There was a time when revenge seemed like the answer, when every part of you screamed for payback, for blood, for the chance to make them feel the way they made you feel. You pictured it, their downfall, their suffering, the look of regret twisting their faces when they finally realized they messed with the wrong one. But then you grew wiser, because real power isn't in revenge, it's in restraint. In understanding that you never needed to dirty your hands, never needed to waste your energy on people who were already digging their own graves. See, karma, karma has patience. It doesn't rush, it doesn't shout. It moves in silence, like a shadow in the dark, watching, waiting, striking when they least expect it. And now, they're running from the very thing they created, running from themselves. But where will they go? Where will they hide from the weight of their own action? Because here's the thing. They thought they won when they tore you down. They thought they were powerful when they stabbed you in the back, when they spread their lies, when they laughed at your pain. But what they didn't understand, every action has a price. They thought you'd be the one suffering. They never expected the bill to come knocking on their own door. See, life has a funny way of balancing the scales. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually, everyone gets exactly what they deserve. And you never had to lift a single finger. You never had to seek revenge or stoop to their level. You just focused on your growth, your evolution, your empire. What breaks them is seeing you rise, seeing you become untouchable, seeing you exist beyond their reach, beyond their control, beyond their understanding. Why all day? They're left trapped in the very chaos they created, because you let karma do what it does best, serve justice in the quietest, most brutal way possible. And now they don't just regret crossing you. They regret ever doubting you existed on a level they could never reach. They expected a war. They expected a battle of words, of fists, of endless back and forth chaos. They thought you'd waste your time proving something to them, fighting, screaming, showing them why they were wrong. But you did the one thing they never saw coming. You walked away. No grand speeches, no dramatic exits, just silence. And that silence, it cut deeper than any words ever could. Because here's the thing, they wanted you to stay, to argue, to fight for their validation, to keep playing their little game. But you understood something they never could. The real power was never in winning, it was in outlasting. You left the battlefield, and they stayed behind, drowning in the same misery, the same insecurities, the same pathetic cycle they created for themselves. You became bigger than their drama, greater than their betrayal. While they clung to their bitterness, you kept rising, kept evolving, kept moving forward. And that was the real checkmate. Because what's worse than losing? Being forgotten. They wanted to be the villain in your story, but you refused to give them a role. They wanted to haunt you, but you let them rot in their own past. They wanted to see you break, but instead, they had to watch you thrive from the sidelines. And now they're left wondering, what if? What if they never betrayed you? What if they never threw dirt on your name? What if they had stood beside you instead of against you? But that's the thing about karma. It doesn't give second chances. It just collects its debts. And you became something they could never touch, never reach, never destroy. And that is the fate worse than any revenge. Because the real pain isn't losing. It's realizing you were never even competition to begin with. Poetic, isn't it? The same fire they set to burn you down is now devouring them instead. They schemed, they plotted, they pulled every dirty trick in the book, and for a while it worked. They laughed while you struggled. They celebrated every fall, every loss, every wound they inflicted. They thought they were winning. But power built on deception, control built on lies, it never lasts. Because when you rise on a foundation of manipulation, it's only a matter of time before the cracks show. And now, their world is burning. The same people they used to turn against you now see through them. The respect they once demanded now turned into whispers, side eyes, silent exits from their lives. Their credibility gone. Their influence fading. The web of power they wove so carefully, unraveling thread by thread. And you? Oh, you built something real. While they wasted their time playing the game, you focused on mastering it. While they thrived on deception, you became undeniable. You didn't need tricks, didn't need lies, didn't need to tear others down to build yourself up. You crafted something with substance, something untouchable, something that wasn't built on sand, but on solid ground. And now they have to watch. Watch as you rise higher and higher, beyond their reach. Watch as doors open for you that will forever remain closed to them. But the cruelest part? They did this to themselves. They wasted all their energy trying to destroy you, and in the end, all they did was destroy themselves. They wanted to be your downfall, but all they became was a footnote in your story. And the worst punishment of all, they can never, ever be you. Because you played the long game, you didn't just survive their attacks, you turned them into fuel. The fuel, you let them think they were winning, let them get comfortable in their illusions. And now, while they choke on the smoke of their own destruction, you breathe freely at the top. You didn't just prove them wrong, you made them irrelevant. Isn't it funny? They thought they held all the cards. They thought they had the power to control you, to dictate your worth, your success, your every move. They thought you'd crumble without their approval, without their validation. But here you are, smiling, not because you're trying to rub it in their faces, no, but because you don't need them. That's the part that burns them the most.